All of that plays out in barely 15 seconds as gunmen in an SUV open fire.
July 30th, 2023. Residents of the 1800 block of Industry Street in New Orleans were going about their day when the sound of gunshots suddenly broke out. A local gang was in a brutal shootout that would leave a 76-year-old woman fatally wounded. These are some of the most disturbing gang assaults caught on camera.
Two seemingly innocent riders surrounded by a group of teens and 20-somethings. One of the victims cut in the head with a machete of all things.
September 8th, 2014. One of the most disturbing gang assaults ever caught on camera takes place shortly after midnight on the Kedzie Brown Line CTA platform in Chicago. Twin brothers, ages 26 and 17, were waiting for a train when a group of 7 individuals belonging to a local gang in the area approached them. The group, consisting of 4 men and 3 teens, demanded that the brothers flash gang signs. The brothers refused and stated clearly that they're not affiliated with any gang. In response, 18-year-old Mario Elvira pulled out a machete from his pants and held it to the throat of the older brother. A juvenile male in the group would also pull out a box cutter and aim it at the younger brother. When the brothers tried to escape, the attackers blocked both victims' paths. In a violent escalation, Elvira began swinging the machete. According to authorities, he used both hands to slash the older brother's head and neck, delivering repeated overhead blows. The brutal attack was caught in full detail on CTA surveillance, which shows the group encircling the victims while Elvira violently hacks at one of them. The 26-year-old victim suffered a massive head wound, a gash 6 inches long and 1.5 inch deep. He received 31 stitches and was taken to the Swedish Covenant Hospital, where he was reported in stable condition. The younger brother was not physically injured. Now, the attackers had fled the platform shortly before a train arrived. Investigators believe the oncoming train may have prevented further harm and had prompted the group to escape. Police apprehended all 7 suspects roughly 45 minutes after the incident, not far from the scene. All were from the north side of Chicago. The arrested adults were identified as 18-year-old Mario Elvira, 20-year-old Kavar Preston, 19-year-old Kevin Ramirez, and 23-year-old Jean Salvatierra. They're all charged with multiple felonies, including robbery, aggravated battery causing great bodily harm, and trespassing on CTA property. Elvira and Preston are each held at a $450,000 bond. Salvatierra and Ramirez were held on a $250,000 bond. On the other hand, the other 3 juvies are charged with various offenses. One boy would be given aggravated assault and trespassing, while another boy and a girl were charged with trespassing. On September 9th, 2014, court proceedings for the adults took place with Judge Bourgeois overseeing bond hearings. The severity of this and the high bond amounts reflected the seriousness of the assault. Cook County State's Attorney's Office spokesperson Tandra Simonton confirmed that the machete was used without provocation after the victims declined to associate with a gang. Now, gang activity had been reported in the area before, but residents and community groups had thought that there was a decline in such violence in recent years. However, that attack would change belief, renewing fears about gang violence on public transportation.
As the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua are seen breaking into apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado.
August 28th, 2024. Surveillance footage from an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado captures one of the most disturbing assaults ever recorded. Now, the video shows a group of armed men, some wearing hoodies, forcing their way into an apartment unit marked 301. One man can be seen aggressively breaking down the door while the others would follow him, brandishing weapons and taking over the area. The men were later linked to the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, a group that had rapidly become one of the most dangerous transnational criminal organizations operating in the Western Hemisphere. The footage shared by a former resident triggered national concern, dominating news headlines. Residents would describe how the building, once a normal apartment complex, had been overtaken now by criminal activity in a matter of months. Many families, including one that was captured in the video, reported using up to 5 locks on their doors out of fear. Well, those fears were validated when a shootout erupted at the complex just minutes after that break-in, bullets riddling parked cars, including the couple's vehicle. The rifle used in that shooting was later found disassembled in an oven inside one of the apartments. Tren de Aragua, originally based out of Venezuela, is notorious for a broad range of criminal activities. They're involved in arms trafficking, drug smuggling, illegal mining, kidnapping, extortion, money laundering, and are especially dominant in human trafficking across Latin America. Their infiltration into the U.S., as confirmed by multiple law enforcement agencies, has sparked panic across several states. FBI reported that they've entered the U.S. through various border sectors and have established footholds in communities with weak property management or lax oversight. Now, following the release of this video, 4 of the 6 individuals seen were arrested. 2 would be apprehended in New York and identified by ICE as confirmed members of Tren de Aragua. The city of Aurora follows an emergency court order to shut down the apartment complex involved, citing a breaking point after a violent kidnapping and assault takes place just weeks after that initial video. On January 14, 2025, the court granted the request, ordering the closure of all but one building in that complex. City officials argued that the property management company, CBZ Management, abandoned its responsibilities, and the gang took advantage of it. And as a result, the apartment complex soon became a den of criminal activity. According to Aurora Police Chief Todd Chamberlain, at least 7 suspects tied to a kidnapping and assault in the area were confirmed members of Tren de Aragua. However, he explains that the real problem wasn't the gang itself, but poor management that let crime get out of control. A confidential report by a Denver law firm, commissioned by the building's lender, provided further evidence. Sent to Aurora city officials in August 2024, the report details how the gang's been taking control of the Whispering Pines apartment complex in 2023. It documented acts of extortion, human trafficking, unlawful firearms possession, sexual abuse of minors, and violent assaults, including threats and physical attacks against property managers. One consultant would be beaten and hospitalized. Another manager would say he was offered a deal from the gang to collect half of all rental income in exchange for protection. The gang even took over vacant units, moving in families, and collecting rent under threats of violence. January 20th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order to designate Tren de Aragua as a foreign terrorist organization. The designation, which took effect on February 20th, 2025, gave federal authorities more power to target the gang's operations within the U.S. 2 months later, the administration also begins deporting alleged Tren de Aragua members under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. The initiative, known as Operation Aurora, was introduced by Trump during a campaign rally in the city, promising an aggressive crackdown on the migrant-linked gang violence.
We want to reassure the people that live in this community that we are actively investigating criminal activity that's happening and listening to them.
As of May 2025, the city of Aurora continues to assist residents displaced by the shutdown of the apartment complex. A total of 52 units were impacted, and relocation efforts are ongoing. Meanwhile, legal proceedings against CBZ Management are moving forward, with city attorneys pushing to hold the company accountable for the breakdown in property oversight that allowed such violence to happen.
Rapper Charles Jones, known as Julio Fulio, shot and killed in Tampa.
In Tampa, where police are still looking for the person who shot and killed a rapper and hurt 3 others outside of a hotel there.
June 23rd, 2024. Rapper Julio Fulio was celebrating his birthday in Tampa, Florida, and went live on Instagram to talk about an upcoming pool party. Now, little did he know that his enemies were watching, and he would soon become the victim of a deadly gang assault that was caught on camera. Charles Andrew Jones II, known in the music world as Julio Fulio, had gained notoriety both for his music and for his involvement in a deadly gang feud. Born back on June 21, 1998 in Jacksonville, Florida, Fulio was raised in the Moncrief neighborhood and became affiliated with the 6-block set of the KTA gang. He would build his career on his music, talking about real-life violence, rapping about murders and inner-city conflict. In fact, his name came with frequent threats, including a previous attempt on his life in October 2023, when he was shot in the foot during an ambush in Jacksonville. Fulio survived that incident and even mocked his attackers by posting images from the hospital, his leg in a large cast.
Hey, the pool party start today at 5, 6 o'clock. If you already got the address, pull up, man. You got the address, pull up. If you need the address, DM me right now.
June 23rd, 2024, while celebrating his 26th birthday, Fulio becomes the victim of a gang assault, caught on multiple surveillance cameras in Tampa, Florida. Now this day he'd posted on Instagram that he's in town, inviting followers to a pool party and later a club event. After authorities shut down the Airbnb he'd rented due to capacity violations, Fulio moved his celebration to Teaser's Gentlemen's Club on North Nebraska Avenue. Surveillance captures him and his entourage leaving the club around 3 a.m. for an after-party at Truth 18 Lounge, another stop he'd broadcast publicly on social media. Investigators later said that Fulio was unknowingly being followed. Members of his rival gangs, identified as 1200 Out East and ATK, had traveled from Jacksonville to Tampa with a premeditated plan to kill him. The suspects would use both a Chevy Cruze and Impala to tail Fulio throughout the night, and video footage outside of Teasers would show suspects Alicia Andrews and Isaiah Chance stepping out of the Cruze and using a phone signaling coordination. Soon after, Sean Gathright arrived in the Impala, and communication between the vehicles was later confirmed through phone records. The situation escalates when Fulio and his group arrive at the Home 2 Suites Hotel on McKinley Drive, where they plan to end the night. Around 4:30 a.m., surveillance records the suspect's vehicle circling the hotel. Moments later, 3 masked gunmen, identified as Gathright, Davian Murphy, and Rashad Murphy, exited their car and approached the lot. At 4:37 a.m., they opened fire with a handgun and 2 rifles. Fulio, sitting in the driver's seat of a black car, tried to escape and was struck multiple times, dying at the scene. The 3 others with him were also hit but survived. The gunman fled in Gathwright's vehicle. The footage was brutal, but it helped the cops identify the suspects. Tampa PD used surveillance from multiple locations, license plate readers, and phone logs to track the suspect's movements before and after that shooting. Investigators soon connected the Chevy Impala used in the attack to Gathright. A subsequent search of his vehicle uncovered weapons and ammunition, though none would match to the murder weapon. However, some munitions were tied to previous shootings in Jacksonville, including the failed 2023 hit on Fulio. July 30th, 2024, authorities announced multiple arrests. Alicia Andrews, Isaiah Chance, and Sean Gathright were taken into custody over the weekend in Jacksonville. A few days later, Rashad Murphy was arrested following a standoff with law enforcement. Only Davian Murphy remained on the run at the time. However, on January 6, 2025, Davian was finally arrested after 6 months on the run by U.S. Marshals at a Jacksonville apartment complex. Each suspect now faces serious charges. Andrews and Chance are given first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm and conspiracy to commit the same. They were also said to be the lookouts who followed Jones as he moved around Tampa to 2 clubs while celebrating his birthday. Gathright faces premeditated murder, attempted murder, and tampering with evidence. This feud that led to Fulio's death had been ongoing for more than a decade, involving retaliatory shootings between 6 Block and its rivals, 1200 and ATK. Fulio was a high-profile target due to his open affiliation and lyrics referencing real killings. Tampa Police Chief Lee Burkaw, Jacksonville Sheriff T.K. Waters, and Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez jointly announced the arrests and emphasized that participating in a murder conspiracy in Florida can result in the same penalties as pulling the trigger. All 4 suspects are now facing potential life sentences, or worse, the death penalty. After her son's death, Fulio's mother, Sandrika Mays, spoke publicly and placed blame not on gang wars, but on the rap industry. She said she had tried to convince her son to abandon his music career after repeated attempts on his life. Authorities later confirmed that Fulio's social media posts contributed to his killers locating him, turning what was supposed to be a birthday celebration into a coordinated and deadly ambush.
Rob, Chicago police tell me that these 3 victims were targeted, that 4 men in 2 different vehicles came down Oak Street, stopped right here in the middle, and started firing.
5 alleged Chicago street gang members now facing federal charges in connection with the shooting death of a local rapper downtown.
August 4th, 2020. FBG Duck was shopping with his girlfriend on Oak Street in Chicago when he was spotted by a member of the O Block gang. Now things quickly went sideways, and it wasn't what anyone expected. Born December 6, 1993, Carlton Weekly, known professionally as FBG Duck, grows up in the south side of Chicago, where he becomes affiliated with the Tukaville faction of the gangster Disciples. He was also a rising figure in Chicago's drill music scene, known for his raw lyrics and deep involvement in the street culture he rapped about. His music gave a voice to the violent reality of Chicago's gang wars, and he gained national attention with his 2018 single, Slide. Despite his success, Weekly never backed off from the ongoing feud between his faction and the rival O Block set of the Black Disciples, a conflict claiming many lives over the years. August 4th, 2020. The gang rivalry reaches a brutal and very public climax. Around 4:26 p.m., FBG Duck is shopping with his girlfriend on Oak Street in Chicago's upscale Gold Coast district, and he's looking for a birthday present for his son. Surveillance footage and police data later confirm that 2 cars, a silver Chrysler 300 and a black Ford Fusion, pull up near the area. Within moments, 4 gunmen exit the vehicles and open fire in broad daylight. Weekly was hit 16 times, some say 21, and he collapses on the scene. His girlfriend and another man are also struck, but the woman sustaining injuries to her wrist would try to return fire. The gunmen quickly returned to their vehicles and sped away. Now, despite this place being monitored with city POD cameras and license plate readers, the attackers showed no hesitation. ER would take Weekly to a nearby hospital, but he's pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Now, the shooting stunned the city, not only because of Duck's notoriety, but also due to the audacity of the attack in one of Chicago's most affluent neighborhoods. The investigation moved quickly. By tracing surveillance, cell phone data, and vehicle movement, the feds began piecing together the pieces of the puzzle. Evidence showed that the attacker had left from Parkway Gardens, also known as O Block, and within 3 minutes of receiving a tip that Weekly was on Oak Street, the gunman mobilized, suggesting a well-coordinated operation. Among these guys would be Charles Liggins, Kenneth Robertson, Christopher Thomas, Marcus Smart, Carlos Offord, and Ralph Turpin. Now, Turpin was set to be the lookout who saw Weekly at the children's clothing store and relayed his location to the rest of the group. All 6 were later arrested, charged with murder in aid of racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder. Each of the men played a distinct role in this ambush. Liggins and Thomas reportedly rode in on Robertson's Chrysler 300, while Offord drove the Ford Fusion carrying Smart and Ezel Rawls, another alleged shooter who later took his own life during the investigation. Forensic evidence connected shell casings from the scene to the vehicles, and phone data placed these guys at the location of the murder. A shell casing matching the weapon was found in Robertson's car. According to federal prosecutors, the motive was a result of an ongoing gang war. Weekly had dropped a diss track titled Dead Bitches just weeks before his death, mocking deceased O Block members, including Liggins' brother. That song intensified tensions between the rival gangs. Prosecutors also pointed to King Von, a fellow rapper and prominent O Block figure, as someone who may have placed a bounty on Weekly's head. Von was said to have rewarded some of the defendants with diamond O Block pendants, indicating their importance in the gang's hierarchy. Prosecutors showed more than 30 witnesses and hundreds of pieces of evidence. Star witnesses included masked informants, bloggers, and even fellow gang members, some of whom already had criminal records or admitted to lying in earlier proceedings. On the other hand, the defense tried to discredit these witnesses, calling them unreliable and claiming that they're only cooperating to secure plea deals. However, surveillance footage, ballistic matches, and phone tracking data proved difficult to refute. January 17, 2024. After a lengthy trial lasting more than 3 months with conflicting testimony and high-profile witness appearances, the jury reached its verdict. All 6 defendants were found guilty of murder and 8 of racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder. Liggins, Robertson, Thomas, Smart, and Offord were also convicted of using a firearm during a violent crime. In the end, all 6 were given life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The verdict brings relief to Weekly's family. His mother, Lashina Weekly, who'd attended every day of that trial, expressed gratitude to the authorities and relief that the men responsible for her son's death would no longer harm others. The federal convictions were some of the most significant law enforcement actions against organized street violence in recent Chicago history. Authorities hope that the outcome sends a message, but the ripple effects of that afternoon on Oak Street continue to echo through the city and beyond.
The brutal robbery caught on video shows several young men pulling guns, even pistol whipping 2 women.
June 24th, 2024. A violent gang assault captured on camera inside Joyeria El Ruby, a family-run jewelry store in northwest Denver. Now, the store had served the community for over 24 years, and it became the site of one of the most disturbing gang-related robberies in recent U.S. memory. Surveillance picks up the sheer brutality committed in broad daylight by an organized group of armed assailants. At approximately 1 p.m., 8 suspects arrive at the jewelry store through the back, pretending to be customers. Moments later, it turns violent. The men draw handguns and begin pistol whipping the staff. Store owner Lydia Tenna and her niece were both struck in the head, blood streaming from their wounds as the gang ransacks the display cases. Tenna later described the terrifying experience to local media, saying that she believed she was going to die. One of the attackers reportedly threatened to kill her if she reached for that panic button. Due to their injuries, neither Tenna nor her niece attempted to resist further, out of fear for their lives. The attackers stole an estimated $2.5 million worth of gold and jewelry. Within minutes, the gang flees the scene. Authorities start a multi-agency investigation that quickly expanded across state lines. Surveillance showed all 8 men clearly, and police issued a bulletin seeking information about these suspects. They're saying the robbers are believed to be part of the Venezuelan Tren de Aragua gang. June 27th, 2024. Just 3 days after the robbery, SWAT officers in El Paso, Texas, are arresting several individuals at a motel near Montana Avenue. One of the primary suspects, Gianfranco Torres Roman, 21, was captured in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Homeland Security agents turn him over to Denver authorities, and he's booked into the Denver Detention Center on state charges of attempted first-degree murder, attempted aggravated robbery, and menacing. According to records, Torres Roman was also linked to a separate shooting in Denver that occurred earlier that month. He's also identified as a member of Tren de Aragua in early July of that same year. On August 21st, 2024, 4 Venezuelan nationals, 23-year-old Oswaldo Lozada Solis, 20-year-old Jesus Daniel Lara del Toro, 21-year-old Gianfranco Torres Roman, and 18-year-old Edwimar Nazareth Colina Romero, were indicted by a federal grand jury in connection with the armed robbery. Lozada Solis, Del Toro, and Torres Roman were charged with armed robbery and brandishing a firearm during a violent crime. Colina Romero faces charges for transporting and possessing stolen goods. Federal sources show that Torres Roman had crossed the U.S. southern border illegally in 2023 and was released into the country with a future court date. By the time of his arrest, he had a U.S. Marshal's hold and was being held on a $1 million bond. Additional agencies, including Homeland Security, the FBI, and local Denver police, collaborated on this case, as concerns over Tren de Aragua's expanding presence in U.S. cities was threatening. December 3rd, 2024. A 5th suspect, Derek Dunn Vargas, 22, was indicted in federal court. He faced charges of armed robbery and brandishing a firearm about the June 24th heist. And the investigation continues as federal officials trace connections between the suspects and other crimes in the Denver area. Authorities confirmed the suspects were linked to organized gang activity and had been under observation for months. Now, following the robberies, federal and local agencies increased coordination in response to threats from Tren de Aragua. Reports would say that the gang had given members the green light to attack or shoot at police officers in Denver. And as a result, police across jurisdictions were alerted, and patrol officers are warned about possible retaliation. Denver Mayor Mike Johnston's office also stated that the safety of its residents and officers remained a top priority.
A man attacked from behind in a Bucktown alley by two men.
Carl Michalak, a 33-year-old man from Chicago, became a victim of a brutal gang assault that was caught on camera and widely circulated online. On September 25, 2023, just before 3 p.m., Michalak was walking down an alley behind Damon Avenue at Dickens Avenue in the Bucktown neighborhood. It was his first day on the job at Red Eye Eyewear, and he had stepped out during a lunch break after picking up a drink and 2 slices of pizza from 7-Eleven. He chose to take the alley rather than the main streets, unaware that 2 men are trailing him closely from behind. Surveillance footage shows 2 assailants following Michalak before ambushing him. One attacker suddenly throws him against a chain-link fence. Then they both proceed to punch him repeatedly, forcing him to the ground. Despite being caught off guard and outnumbered, Michalak attempts to resist and fight back. At one point, he pushes one assailant into a row of garbage carts. He also repeatedly tells him, "Get the fuck off me." And at this point, the other attacker says, "Just let it go," as they struggle to wrestle away Michalak's belongings. In the end, they nabbed his backpack and possibly a cell phone before fleeing the scene on foot. This entire thing was recorded on a nearby security camera, and it shows a passing car stopping as the driver honked the horn in this attempt to scare off the attackers. However, the honking had no effect, and the assault continued until the robbers had what they wanted. A woman in the vehicle remained at the scene after the attackers fled, staying with Michalak until police and medical personnel arrived. They took Michalak to a nearby hospital, where he was listed in stable condition. He had some swelling, a bruised lip, and cuts and scrapes on his face and hands. Now, these weren't life-threatening, but that attack left a lasting impact on him. Notably, this was the second time in the same year that Michalak had been assaulted. In March, he was already targeted in a separate robbery involving 3 attackers.
When you saw them, did you think anything was wrong?
No. Seemed like they were just talking to each other, minding their own business. I didn't even think they looked at me.
The assault in Bucktown took place in broad daylight, and its brazen nature caused significant public outrage once that footage went viral. This fueled a lot of criticism of the city's crime control policies and prompted backlash against local government officials. 2 days after this assault, Michalak went back to work. On his second day back, a nearby church presented him with a sizable donation raised through a GoFundMe campaign to help cover his medical expenses. Michalak expressed a desire to avoid living in fear despite the attacks, and he explains that being overly cautious or paranoid wouldn't help, and might even make him more vulnerable. February 15th, 2024, authorities announced the arrest of one of the attackers, Andre Simmons, 33, taken into custody on the 1200 block of South Central Park. He's charged with robbery, aggravated battery in a public space, and driving on a suspended license. Detectives said the DNA evidence linked Simmons to the attack, and the arrest was seen as a breakthrough after months of public concern and media coverage.
All of that plays out in barely 15 seconds as gunmen in an SUV open fire.
July 30th, 2023. Just after 5:15 p.m., a violent gang assault is caught on camera in the 7th Ward of New Orleans. This takes place in the 1800 block of Industry Street, where 2 women were left injured. Surveillance from a nearby home captures the attack in full detail, showing a black Honda, possibly a CR-V, pulling up to the home where the victims were sitting peacefully on their porch. It shows a gunman quickly jumping out of the back seat and opening fire directly toward the house. A second shooter gets out of the vehicle and joins in. A barrage of gunfire continues for several seconds, striking the 2 women, one 36 and the other 76. As the shots rang out, one of the victims, or possibly someone else on the porch, returned fire toward the attackers. The rapid exchange of bullets echoes down the street, sounding like dozens of shots being fired in under a minute. And after unleashing the attack, the shooters flee east on Industry Street. The victims were immediately rushed to the hospital. Now, despite the violence, both women had survived, and police confirmed their injuries were non-life-threatening. The incident shakes the community, with neighbors now expressing concern over the growing violence. One witness, Gregory War, said that he initially thought the gunfire was fireworks until he saw the car speeding away. Another resident, Adam Dawson, would say that this block had once been one of the safest areas of the 7th Ward, but noted that times had changed. Police responded to that scene and recovered video evidence showing the entire assault. The video blows up on social media and local news, drawing attention to the growing trend of armed gang-style ambushes in residential neighborhoods. They stated that this might have been a pre-planned assault as two people exited the vehicle and began shooting without hesitation. Now, during this investigation, officers arrest one individual at the scene on charges of being a felon in possession of a firearm. However, it's not immediately confirmed whether this person was involved in the assault or just returning fire in self-defense. The suspects who opened fire from the vehicle remain at large. Detectives from the 5th District urged anyone with information about the black Honda or the shooters to come forward. The case remained under investigation into 2024, with police continuing to follow leads and identify and arrest those responsible. And as of 2025, authorities haven't released any new updates regarding additional arrests connected to the shooting.
And this was scary and wild. A shootout in the middle of the day.
March 7th, 2025. A gang-style shootout in broad daylight is caught on surveillance cameras on Yale Road between Raleigh and Bartlett in Memphis. The incident begins as an attempted robbery outside a convenience store. Memphis PD report that a group of 5 individuals, including a child who appeared to be around 10 years old, try to rob a man for his shoes. And when the man gets out of the store and sees him, he immediately runs back into the convenience store and hides behind the counter. Surveillance captures a nearby car with someone inside rolling down the window and opening fire on the group. The suspects quickly duck behind another car to avoid being hit. Seconds later, some members of the group pull out guns of their own and return fire. The shootout spills into the streets as they chase the fleeing vehicle, exchanging more gunfire. Now, despite all the bullets and the presence of a child amongst the suspects, no injuries, thank God, were reported from this shootout. The violence continues after the gunfire ended. Once everything seemed calm, the original victim leaves the store and begins walking up the street. And as he did, the group of suspects pull up next to him in a black vehicle and accuse him of snitching. Surveillance captures what happened next. The victim flees on foot, jumps a fence, and runs into a yard where 2 small children are playing, and he can be heard in the footage shouting, "Hey, let me in! Some of the suspects were also seen on camera running outside the fence searching for the victim. The homeowner confirmed to Fox 13 that she let the man inside her home and called the police immediately after hearing his story. Her call likely prevented another violent confrontation. Shortly after, Memphis PD released images of the suspects. Police confirmed they were searching for 5 individuals in connection with the incident, including the child who participated in the attempted robbery and shootout. Authorities asked the public to contact Crime Stoppers with any information about the suspects. The March 7th shootout remains under investigation as law enforcement continues to identify and locate the individuals involved. The Memphis community was left shaken by the footage and the fact that such violence can occur so openly and involve individuals of such a young age.
A violent mob of bike-riding teens brutally attacked a man in the middle of a Los Angeles street.
February 24th, 2025. A brutal gang assault happens in broad daylight in the Mid-Wilshire neighborhood of LA. Around 5 p.m., a man is swarmed and violently attacked by a group of 20 to 30 teenagers riding bikes after an argument escalated into a physical confrontation. The assault, which occurred at the intersection of San Vicente Boulevard and Carrillo Drive, was caught on video and later released by investigators. The incident began with an unnamed 27-year-old victim stepping out of his car to confront several teenagers who'd reportedly struck and kicked his vehicle. Moments later, all these teenagers start kicking and hitting this man. The footage shows him being knocked to the ground and beaten relentlessly as he lay helpless. More teens rush over, throwing their bikes down, joining in on the attack. The victim is punched, kicked, and stomped repeatedly, and the beating continues until nearby witnesses intervened, prompting the group to scatter and flee south on Carrillo Drive. Paramedics get there and treat this man for visible injuries, and despite having one swollen eye shut, a really black eye, and a swollen jaw, the victim declined to transport to a hospital. According to Natasha Espinal, a family friend, the victim looked severely injured and was clearly in poor condition. And she was working with the victim's mother to contact neighbors in the area in hopes of identifying any of the teens involved. Now, the video of this incident has shocked everybody, drawing strong condemnation from city officials. LA Councilwoman Katie Yaroslavsky, who represents District 5, where it occurred, released a statement calling this unacceptable and promising accountability for those involved. She emphasized that the violence has no place in LA and expressed support for the victim and his family. She also said that the LAPD is actively investigating the case. February 26, 2025. The LAPD provided an update confirming that 2 juvenile suspects had been arrested in connection with the attack. The arrests were made by officers from the Wilshire Division, who acted on an anonymous tip submitted by a member of the public. The remaining attackers, believed to be between the ages of 16 and 18, are still being sought. Police have asked for the public's help in identifying anybody and confirmed that at this time there is no indication the attack was motivated by hate. Authorities continue their investigation, urging anyone to contact the detectives from the LAPD Wilshire Division if they have any information. The LAPD hasn't ruled out any possibility of making more arrests, as they're working around the clock to identify all individuals involved. With the footage circulating and arrests beginning, officials hope more witnesses come forward. But until then, the majority of them remain at large, and the investigation remains ongoing.